I want to make a couple quick comments here. Tonight we are here to do the special meeting for budget approval and also our tax request. And in past, this is technically two separate hearings with two separate public forums, but because they're essentially one and the same, what we are going to do today is when we call the actual meeting to order, the budget hearing piece will start. Mr. Alexander will give us a budget presentation. We will then close that portion of the hearing, and then we will open up the tax hearing. Again, Mr. Alexander will give us a presentation. Then we will move into public forum that will cover both budget and tax, and then the board will take action. One other thing to note too, if you are here and you would like to speak to the board, there are cards available at the little table right there by the door. Please complete one of those and give it to Danielle, sitting over here by Dr. Nielsen. So that is required. You have to complete the card before you'll be allowed to speak to the board. All right. It's 5:30. We will call to order. The Board of Education makes available at least one current copy of the Open Meetings Act, which is posted on the west wall of the meeting room and accessible to members of the public. Can you please stand with me to recite the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we will be starting with the special budget meeting. Do I have a motion?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 approve the agenda as presented.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Janet. All those in favor, your votes please. Motion passes. Next up is information on the budget. Mr. Alexander.
Okay, so I am a stander when I talk. It's just one of those things, and we have typically we project on the TVs, but we're projecting up here tonight so the numbers and everything can be big enough that everybody can see. So before we dive into this, I just want to say thank you for being here and trying to educate yourself a little more. And I hope it's useful information for you in learning about how school finance and budgeting and taxation all works. And so I appreciate you taking the time to be here with us this evening. Keep in mind that everything here is a proposal until the Board of Education votes at the end of the meeting, and we'll try and get through it as quick as we can, but we've tried to include as much information as you could possibly ever want to know about school budgets. So hopefully it helps. Our objectives for both of these hearings: one, explain goals for proposed 22-23 budget, do a quick review of BPS historical financial background, discuss factors of budget proposals, expenditures, and the receipt side of the 22-23 budget, talk about those. Then 1 through 4 really talk about the budget. The budget and the taxes are two different items. So then we'll move into the 22-23 tax levy, and we'll look at the resolution. The board will be talking about the resolution at the end of the meeting. So, the proposed budget. These are the goals of the budget cycle. Number 1 will always be first and foremost the most important thing. Financing an educational program that supports the best interest of the students attending Beatrice Public Schools. That will be the number 1 goal of myself and this board, no matter when forever. I was hired to make decisions, the best decisions for kids. And so our budget will reflect that. Number 2, adjusting general fund and building fund to accommodate current and future building needs. This began in 2020-2021, and we will show you and explain that as we go through. And finally, number 3, maintain appropriate revenue stream in light of projected state aid revenue loss. This is an important concept to grasp. We'll talk about it more in depth as we move through. Can everybody hear me? Okay, good. First, let's talk about the classifications of funds. There are a there are a bunch of funds in school finance. I'm not going to read all this information to you, but I'm going to basically hit the highlights of the funds and the ones that are taxed and the ones that are not. The first one that everybody's most familiar with is the general fund, okay? The general fund is like your checking account at home. It's primarily where you're going to pay most of your expenditures, and it's where you're going to receive most of your finance for your general fund. This information can also be found on the Department of Education website. There's the depreciation fund. The depreciation fund is a fund that's funded by the general fund. So, and it's designed for any depreciable items that you may have in a school district that over time wear out. That's pretty broad, but the depreciation fund may be established by a school district to facilitate the eventual purchase of costly capital outlay by reserving such monies from the general fund to do so. What that means is general fund money can be transferred into the depreciation fund. Those chairs in the front row, when they disintegrate, or computers, or LCD projectors, whatever the case may be, when it's time to replace those, that fund is available to do that. The employee benefit fund. It's designed to specifically reserve general fund money for the benefit of the school district employees, unemployment compensation, early retirement, health insurance deductibles, etc. We don't have any early retirement benefits, just for clarification purposes out there. But from time to time, if we have employees who are eligible, leave us, and qualify for unemployment, we have to pay that just like any other business has to pay that. Activities fund. This is the fund that's required to account for the financial operations of quasi-independent student organizations, interschool athletics, and other self-supporting, partially self-supporting school activities. So the activities fund covers everything from our fine arts department to our athletics department. It's an in and out thing. If we take receipts at games, money, that money is deposited into the activity fund. Okay? The school nutrition fund here at Beatrice Public Schools is 100% self-sufficient. The general fund has only supported the school nutrition fund in instances where they need to purchase large equipment that should be, and it's capital that the school nutrition fund needed help with, so they don't have to raise their prices too much. So again, I will say Dawn Holthus runs the school nutrition program. Her and her staff do an excellent job, and she is in charge of that entire budget, and it works. It's totally self-sufficient. The bond fund is established to record tax receipts, investment interest, and the payment of bond principal interest and other related costs, trustee fees. Everybody's pretty much familiar with a bond issue. Anytime you run a bond issue or you have funds that you want to establish for the purposes of building or a purchase of something that may be large, you can add additional taxes with the passage of a bond, which requires a vote. So a bond issue is an additional tax. That raises the tax levy. You'll see later on in the presentation. The special building fund. The special building fund shall be established when a school board decides to acquire or improve sites and or to erect, alter, or improve buildings. So that means the special building fund is a place that's designed to pay for the erection of buildings or the repair of buildings or alter buildings. If you want to add on, you can pay for that out of your special building fund. That's the fund designated by the state of Nebraska, the Department of Education, to pay for those things. And it comes with a tax levy that's restricted to 14 cents with school board approval, or a 17.5 cent following a vote of the people for a term not to exceed 10 years. So even though the building fund is capped at 14 cents, by a vote of the people, you can have a levy override to exceed that for no longer than 10 years at a time if you so choose. The Qualified Capital Purpose Undertaking Fund, probably the most confusing fund in the school finance selection of funds. The QC PUF, as we refer to it often, may be established for the removal of environmental hazards, the reduction or elimination of accessibility barriers in school district buildings, the payment of qualified zone academy bond issues for a qualified school purpose, modifications for life safety code violations, life safety hazards, and mold abatement and prevention projects for existing facilities only. So, this fund was used in 2010 by Beatrice Public Schools to redo roofs and lighting. And it can be taxed accordingly up to 3 cents, okay? Right here. The tax levy for qualified capital purpose undertaking projects in place prior to April 19, 2016 remains at 5.2 cents. So what this is telling you is in state statute 79-10-110, the state of Nebraska at one time allowed 5.2 cents to be taxed in the qualified capital purpose undertaking fund. They changed that to 3 cents, but if your project was done before this date, you could keep taxing at 5.2 cents. Before we go too much further, we want to talk about enrollment, because we just want to make sure that we provide enough information, more information than what anybody could possibly need. So this is an enrollment graph, and I know these numbers might be a little hard to see, but it goes clear back to 2001-2. There were 2,200 students, 2,249. Last year in 2021-22, we were at 2,044. This year, on September 1st, and that date's important, we have 2,107 students. So our enrollment has gone up a little bit, okay? Why, go back one, sorry. The reason this is important to understand is because part of this also reflects the state aid formula as well, which I'm going to talk about in a second. Typically, we don't put this number on this graph until October 1st, because that's the date that the Department of Education requires all your student enrollment information be in the right spot, be uploaded to their system. So they take that right out of our student information system on October 1st, but we put it up there for purposes of this discussion tonight. You many times may have heard about TEOSA, or the Tax Equity Educational Opportunities Support Act. LB 1059, established in 1990. This formula was created to create a fair system in 1990. It was the best proposal the legislature had, and it was proposed by individuals, okay? To the legislature. The legislature voted on it and approved it, and it's been in use since. Now, the key is it's been in use since, but it's also been modified multiple times since 1990. I hope this is clear enough for you to see back there. But the bottom line to the Tax Education Opportunity Support Act, and you probably saw it this other night if you were at the LB 644 hearing, needs minus resources equals state aid. That's the bottom line. That's as simple as it gets. But underneath your needs, you have all of these allowances and adjustments that are made within the formula. So they take your fall membership times your basic funding, plus all these allowances and adjustments that just depend on your school population. Every school is different. So every one of these is different for every school. On the resources side, this is the one that probably impacts the discussion that this community has had the most in the last week. That is adjusted valuation as a resource. You heard Senator Dorn say the other night that when a district has a lot of land worth a lot of money, it makes them look very wealthy. So that will be a resource that the state will use to determine how much state aid they get. There's also the local effort rate that's part of that formula too. Okay? I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that. It's important, don't get me wrong, but it's also in the weeds further than we need to get for purposes of this discussion. The adjusted valuation, so you have your needs minus your resources equals your state aid. We're going to delve into that a little further, but the bottom line is we're going to talk about that valuation number in a few minutes. 86 equalized districts in the state, so there's 246 school districts in the state, 86 of them receive state aid. The rest don't. If you receive state aid, like Beatrice, the term the state uses is you're an equalized district. If you don't, then you're a non-equalized district. There's 158 of those schools in the state. Beatrice Public Schools state aid history. This is very important information. This graph started in 2002, 2003. That's just where we decided to take it back to. You can see how from that time period, state aid climbed a little bit. But in 2010-11, something remarkable started to happen in our state. And that is that property value started to grow extensively. Sorry, I talk a lot with my hands. Property value started to grow extensively. So what the state figured out is if we go back to that TIOSA formula and we tweak it a little bit, we can reduce the amount of state aid that's going to schools and shift it to the taxpayer through valuations. So the bottom line is, when valuations go up, state aid goes down. You heard Senator Dorn talk about that the other night. That's because when you have a lot of land, your district looks rich, whether the people in it are or are not. It looks that way to the state, so they say, we don't have to pay you as much money. Okay? That started to happen in 2010-11, and consequently, as valuations started to go up, which we're going to show you in the next graph, you can start to see what happened. This is the state aid receipts history for Beatrice Public Schools. So and we started at 2010-11 because that's the year I denoted. You can see that that was one of the highest years of state aid for the state of Nebraska at $850,803. The next year they lost $1.6 million. This continues to show all the gains and losses throughout the course of the years. The total loss in state aid to Beatrice Public Schools since 2010-11 is $2,046,356.64. That's revenue that has not been paid to the school because of the tweak of the formula. Valuation history. This arrow is pointing to the year 2011-12, and it shows that's when valuations in Beatrice really started to climb to where they are right now. So when you correlate those two slides, you see exactly what started to happen. There is no, they are directly correlated with each other. Valuations and state aid. Okay? This is the valuation history. Again, starting in 2010-11, that year, well, look at that. We had a negative $9,237,292 in valuations. But remember what that number was for state aid? It was the highest it's ever been. But then, look at what started to happen the next several years. Valuations started to go up. State aid started to go down. Okay? Hearing notice explanation. This is where a lot of confusion happens for the general public when the hearing notices are sent out. And it's all information that it becomes very difficult to explain, so I'm going to do my best. The 22-23 budget continues to invest in meeting the needs of our district with growing student needs. The general fund budget of expenditures shown on the notice of budget hearing and budget summary, the public notice that's in the paper, is simply an estimate to allow the district to expend unused budget authority for future years and reflects anticipated expenditures. Reflects anticipated expenditures. There is no way I can tell you in February how much this school district will spend. Do we have a budget in place to guide us? Yes. But what happens if we have 10 days off for snow? What happens if we have a tornado come through next week? What happens if we have a boiler break? Or, better yet, at our middle school, we have an air conditioner, a $60,000 air conditioner go out. That can happen like it did last week, or it can happen in December. The district estimates the budget of expenditures with the worst case scenario frame of mind of all active funds so that we don't have to amend them later in the year due to unanticipated costs in all of these funds. The notice of budget hearing, the budget summary, the public notice is very deceiving to the public, and the only actual figures are the actual disbursements and transfers in column 1. Okay, so on the hearing notice that's in the paper, and I know it's hard to read, column 1 shows actual disbursements that come from the public audit that's done every single year for the end of the budget cycle. The auditors have been here the last 3 days doing our audit for the budget cycle that just ended on August 31st. So we won't know what those expenditures truly are until the auditors are done for 22, 21, 22, until we get that report back from the auditors. Okay? So here's the notice in bigger print for you. If you have it with you, great. If it's in the newspaper and you struggle to read it, we'll do our best to explain. This is exactly what I just read to you. I'm going to show you. The actual disbursements and transfers 2020 to 2021, that is an audited number that comes down here to the bottom of every single fund I talked about at the beginning. The general fund, the depreciation fund, the employee benefit fund. There's a contingency fund, but we don't budget anything in there. The activities fund, school nutrition fund, the bond fund, the special building fund, the quality capital purpose undertaking fund, the cooperative fund, and the student fee fund. The reason there's a number in the bond fund in 21-22 is because there was leftover money from the bond issue for the high school that ran for 20 years, from 2010 to 2018, so 18 years, or 20 years. They may have paid it off early, but it expired in 2018 and there was leftover funds in there. So we budgeted that to transfer to the general fund. Perfectly legal operation, just a certain process you have to follow. This number is actual. It says actual disbursements and transfers. 2020, 2021. 21-22, which is the budget cycle we just ended on August 31st, it says actual estimated disbursements and transfers. The reason that's estimated in preparation for the next budget, we don't know that number, these numbers, until the auditors are done with our audit. The budget cycle ended August 31st. What's that? 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago? So these numbers are guesses as to what we're actually going to spend. Now we track it so we have an idea, but we don't actually know all that until the audit's done. And then these numbers will shift over here for next year's budget. This is probably the one that draws the most question. And this is column number 3 on the special hearing notice. Column number 3 is a real estimate. Complete estimate on the basis of history of what you can use. And then there's one more factor that we'll show you in a minute. The state determines this top number of your general fund operating expenses. I'll show you that in just another slide here in a minute. That $30,651,868 is, the state tells us that we can spend that amount of money on the LC2 computation document. Okay? Depreciation fund, that's a budget number that we have. We could budget whatever we want in there to spend if we thought we were going to have big expenditures, but you don't really want to budget more than you have, so that's approximately what we have. Probably a little less. Employee benefit fund, activities fund, school nutrition fund, special building fund. This one's drawing a lot of attention, $5.7 million. Why is it so high? Well, we're budgeting to spend $5.7 million. That doesn't mean we're going to spend that. That's an estimate, complete estimate. The reason it's budgeted like that is so we can take care of any issues that may come up in our current and existing buildings, and also so we have $2.3 million of ESSERS funds that we know we can spend out of there as well. 20% of those funds tagged for HVAC in the new building. The Qualified Capital Purpose Undertaking Fund, $1.1 million. That's how much we could spend out of there if we needed to. This qualified capital purpose undertaking fund will come due in 2033. It's what they call a bullet payment system for quality school construction bonds. This one, there will be a bullet payment that we have to make in 2033 that we have to be saving enough money for. Every year we're paying off a little bit of principal and interest on that, but we have to be saving money to pay that off in 2033. The Cooperative Fund, we budget for that. The Student Fee Fund, you can see the budget for that. And then this is the total down here. The actual total of expenses in 2021 was $27,009,060. That number was given to us and completed by our audit. 21-22 is an estimate until our auditors tell us what that number is, estimated at $28.4 million. This number, $41.665,607, that number is an estimate. It's a complete estimate. And last year, 21-22 special hearing notice, it was $43,903,215. It was higher last year than it is this year. That's because all this number was higher, and we estimated that we might have more expenditures last year. Okay? But just because you budget for an expenditure does not mean you're necessarily going to have it. It's very similar to maybe what you do with your home budget. You may estimate that your Spectrum TV or whatever it is, your cable TV is going to cost you $80 a month, but then you order a movie in December because it's Christmas time and you want to watch a movie. And now your bill went up $5 or whatever it costs to rent that movie. Okay? So that's just a basic overview of how this works. Okay? And then it lists your total available resources before property taxes. We'll talk about this number with more in a minute. And then it talks about your total personal and real property taxes in each one of these boxes. Okay? So I know this is hard to see. We're going to expand that for you in a moment. And it gives you your total personal and real property tax requirement. So, budget authority. Let's just talk about that for a quick second. This shows you our budget authority established by the state of Nebraska from 2017-18 to current year. And you can see it fluctuates. In 17-18 it was $30,288,694. Currently it's $30,651,868. Last year it was $30,518,130. Okay? So this is a historical review of our revenue and expenditures just to show you how Beatrice Public Schools' budget has reacted over time from 2000-2001 to 2021. The green line shows you actual revenue. The red line shows you actual expenditures. The focal point for that is that traditionally, over the course of the last 21 years, Beatrice Public Schools has not overspent its budget. Okay? Let me restate that. Has not overspent its revenue. Okay? Which also means budget. General fund revenue and expenditures history. Here it is. Okay? In 2010-2011, the actual revenue of the district was $21,595,697. The actual expenditures were $20,170,053. In 2020-2021, the revenue was $25,231,569. The actual expenditures was $24,462,929. So, just all that's designed to show you is that the district has not overspent its revenue. The budget has two sides. Okay, and this, if you think about your home operation, it's very similar. You have an expenditure side and you have your revenue side. Your expenditure side are your bills. Your revenue side is it's your check. It's your monthly income. The Nebraska Department of Education has a document called the Lid Computation Factor. So LC stands for Lid Computation Document. It's called the LC2. The NDE certifies what you can spend on the expenditure side. They allow you to access your prior used authority. So you can see they certified for us this coming year $26,166,306. Our unused authority is $510,562. So that brings you to $26,676,868. The total allowable budget authority. Then you have to factor in your special education budget. The Beatrice Public Schools special education budget is $3,975,000 for next year. That brings you to your total budget of expenditures. $30,651,868. If you look at the special hearing notice, it's in the paper, that's at the top of column 3, anticipated, estimated budget of expenditures. That's the number that comes from the LC2. That's 3.5% is certified by the NDE. Okay? On the revenue side, so now we switch from expending money to receiving money, the revenue side. This is where our money comes from. Our beginning cash balance is estimated to be $7,034,821. The reason it's estimated is because at the end of the budget cycle, August 31st to September 1, we never really know what's in that county treasurer's balance until we get the check at mid-month. Other revenues. This is state and federal. So this again is estimated. This number could change. It could go up or it could go down. If the federal government comes in and says, well, your other revenue sources, the federal government comes in and says, you know, we gave you $2 million of Title I funding, but we can't necessarily pay that, so we're going to take that $1 million away from you. That's happened before. Okay? So some of this money is soft money. Means it can come and go throughout the course of the year. State aid, that's a certified number. That's the amount we're going to get, Beatrice Public Schools will get next year. We can count on that in 10 monthly installments. Okay? September through June. July and August, you do not get any state aid. So you have to have enough saved up in your bank account to be able to pay the bills for July and August, knowing you're going to be short that number divided by 10 per month. That brings our total revenues before taxes to $18,060,959 estimated. Tax number $20,590,909, which means that balances our budget at $30,651,868. Expenditure side, revenue side, balance. That's what that means. Okay? Talk about cost per pupil real quick. I won't spend a lot of time on this. The graph is probably more important than these numbers, but these numbers are what makes up the next graph. Traditionally, Beatrice Public Schools has always remained below the state average. The red line is the state average. In 2020, 2021, spending for the state, average per pupil cost, average daily membership is how it's figured, was $14,495. Beatrice Public Schools in blue was $13,917. With that, that's the budget side. So that's the budget hearing. We will need a motion to close the budget hearing and a motion to open the special tax request hearing. Are there any questions from the board on the budget before we do that? Okay.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Do I have a motion to adjourn the budget hearing?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 adjourn.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Janet. Can I have your votes, please? All right, motion passes. We are adjourned with the special budget hearing. I will now call to order the special tax hearing request. The Board of Education makes available at least one current copy of the Open Meetings Act, which I've already discussed. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 approve the agenda as presented.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion. I have a second.
Second.
Second by Eric. Can I have your votes, please? All right, motion passes. All right, now into the information portion, which we will have Mr. Alexander continue his presentation.
Okay. Sorry you have to listen to me talk tonight, but I want to make sure I'm as transparent as can possibly be. You have all the information that you could need, and if you don't, please feel free to come in and see me. So on August 20th, every year, the county assessor certifies our valuations. This is the document right here. This is the document that tells us for the tax year 22, this is what the school district taxable value is right there. $1,384,000, or excuse me, $1,384,439,720. That's the valuation set by the county assessor. This year, because of LB 644, it includes the school district real growth value. That's never been on there before. Our prior year valuation was $1,181,661,320. The real growth percentage that we have the ability to access is 1.65%. Okay? Valuations for comparison purposes. Now we're going to show you this graph that illustrates this year. Then we're going to show you some information that I think is important to understand. 22-23 basic valuation breakout. So that's the number of the valuation, and here's how it breaks out into the different types of property. Okay? Personal property is $72,223,930. That's what it's valued at. That was 5.2% of the 100% pie. Centrally assessed was 5.4, $74,963,846. Agriculture makes up 36.3% of the pie for Beatrice Public Schools. That's $502,493,035. This year, urban makes up 53.1%. This is important to understand. This is what I was trying to explain the other night in the LB 644 meeting. Urban makes up $734,758,900. Okay? Why that's important is because I talked the other night about the pendulum. The pendulum used to, property taxes used to a lot weigh heavily on our local farmer. They've been saying that since 2010-11. Now the pendulum has swung a little bit to catch back up, and you see that urban is more. And we'll show you in the next slide exactly what I'm talking about. So the years are in color. 22-23 is blue. 21-22 is red. And 20-21 is yellow. And I know those numbers might be difficult to read where you're at. But for purposes of conversation, I'm just going to talk about probably the yellow, which was 20-21, and the blue, which is 22-23. So personal property, which is residential, urban, let's talk about urban. Urban in 2021 is 53.4%. In 22-23 is 53.1. Agricultural, 37.8. And in 22-23, 36.3. So you can see how the part of the pie has shrunk a little bit in terms of how these are assessed. Okay? How does that impact the general fund tax levy history? This slide the other night I know is a little bit difficult to see, but I tried to point out that in 2001-2002, the total levy for the district was $1.17. $1.17, and that's because there was a bond on there. The bond issue had been passed. Okay? And the QC cost was on there, and the general fund, and the building fund. Let's go back. Over the course of time, laws changed in the legislature. 2010-11, things started to happen, valuations started to go up. The legislature said, okay, we're going to ratchet down what schools, how much schools they can tax. They ratcheted it down at one point to $1. Then the legislature decided that's too low. We're gonna put it at $1.05. So Beatrice Public Schools, because they've continually lost state aid because valuations have gone up, have had to stay at $1.05 to have enough revenue to support the operations of the school district. This shows you the taxing funds and the history of the taxing funds. So let's just take a look at 2013-14 and then we'll jump down to the proposed budget for this year. In 2013-14, the general fund levy was $1.39, so $1.04 in the state side. The building fund was $1.04 cents. The bond fund was 7.9 cents at that time, and it fluctuates. The quality capital purpose undertaking fund was 2.9 cents. That brought a total levy of $1.15 to the district. The bond was voted on in 2010. It was passed, and so throughout these years it carried on. So we're going to jump down here now to 22-23. Was it? What year was it?
1996.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was 1996 the bond issue passed. I wasn't here, so I apologize. 22-23, the general fund levy is now at 91 cents if you round it up. The building fund's at 13.9 cents. This fund, these two funds are capped at $1.05. Those are the two that are capped at the $1.05 levy. There is no bond fund, which is why our levy is not $1.15 or $1.17, because there's no bond fund. The quality capital purpose undertaking fund will be set at 2.6096. Okay? I explained the other night, I had this up a little bit higher because of the concept that if we taxed 1/1000th of a cent more in the quality capital purpose undertaking fund, we could generate revenue to pay that off 1 or 2 years earlier, which means then it would be gone. Okay? But decided not going to do that. We're going to keep it at 2.6 cents. That brings our total levy to $1.75501. That's history. Let's talk about the special hearing notice that you all received. Okay? This special hearing notice that's in the paper shows you the valuation increase. Last year it was $1,298,995,241. Next year's $1,384,439,720. That's a 7% change. Okay? Now, this document is auto-fill. That comes from the state that way. They round that up to 7%. That's not actually 7% when you do the math on it. Just a point of note. So when we talk about the special hearing notice, let's talk about it compares 21-22 to 22-23. We've highlighted it in red so it stands out. Let's talk about the general fund first. The operating budget, the total fund of expenditures set by the state was $30,518,103. The property tax was set at 94.3 cents. 94.3 cents. That generated $12,257,922. Okay? The operating budget for 22-23, as set by the NDE, is $30,651,868. The general fund drops to 90 cents, 90.4 cents. which generates $12,590,909. Jumping down to the special building fund, last year the operating budget was $5.8 million. We were putting in 10.6 cents last year into the special building fund. This year, it's $5.7 million. We're increasing that to 13.9 cents. Perfectly, it's two baskets, the general fund and the building fund. And you can interchange cents in those baskets however you want to, as long as it doesn't go over $1.05. So this year, based on valuation increases, that 13.9 cents will generate in the special building fund $1,937,466. Let's talk about QC Puff real quick, so we're not using up too much time and we'll move on. QC Puff, the operating budget is $1,144,443. The proposed property tax request is $361,277, which means the proposed tax rate is 2.6 cents, which brings our total tax rate for 22-23 to 1.075, as compared to last year, 1.076. So we're actually lower by 1/1000th of a cent. This is all of that information extracted and blown up with a little bit more information that I think is pretty important. So it's all those numbers taken off and tried to simplify and condense down to make it easier to explain. Special hearing notice. The 21-22 general fund was set at 94.3646 cents. That's all the digits all the way up. 22 general fund, 0.909459. All the digits all the way up. Building fund, last year was at 0.106345, which is 10.6 cents. Those are all the digits all the way up. Building fund, this year, proposing 0.139946, all the way up. The bond fund is listed for you there, just so everybody understands. It's a bond, it's a fund that's accessible. The district is not taxing for it right now because that would increase taxes. That would increase the tax levy. The QC Puff is set at 2.6 cents. That was in 21-22. The QC Puff, we brought that back down to 2.6 cents this year, so it's not, the levy does not change. The mill levy difference is 0.00054 cents lower. That's 0.050184%, for those of you that like percentages. Here's something that not a lot of people know. And you probably wouldn't know this unless you work in school finance or you've listened to me bore you to death with talk about school finance. Administrators are nodding their head no. 21-22 general fund tax request was $12,135,343. But the county asks us to collect an additional 1%. So last year, $122,579 was collected on our tax, it shows on our tax levy to go to the county. Okay? So that brings our total tax request to $12,257,922 last year. This year, our general fund tax request is $12,465,000, but we have to assess $125,909 to go to the county. That's also true of the QC Puff. So our total tax request this year is $12,590,909. The general fund, 21-22, $12,135,343. That's what the school district got out of that money. This year, we get $12,465,000, The difference between those two numbers is a $329,657 difference. In the special building fund, last year, $1,367,599. This year, $1,918,091, which is a difference of $550,492. Because we have to tax 1% out of each taxing fund. The general fund, the building fund, and the QC Puff fund, each fund has to be taxed an additional 1% to go to the county. So, what does that mean? Well, 21-22, our total tax was $12,257,922. 22-23, $12,590,909. But really, we're only getting $12,465. Talking about the percent, the dollar change, again, same numbers you saw just a minute ago. The general fund tax request is $329,657. The building fund tax request, $550,492. The QC Puff request is $229. Okay, that totals $880,378. When we talk about our projections and how this $329,657 affects us, we are going to talk about the loss of state aid in previous years. Because we're always trying to catch up that number. Here's some other operational expenses, and these are estimated amounts with the I know two of these amounts are exact. Our property insurance went up $31,187. Our bus route increases went up $18,436. LB 644 that sent out all those pink postcards, even to people who have a homestead exemption that don't see a tax increase at all, will cost the district $10,000 is an estimate. I won't know that until I get those cards that went to the state printer from the county clerk. The county clerk will get a bill and divide that up amongst all the public entities that participated in the LB 644. So that's an estimate right now, but I think it'll be pretty close to that. That means that we have a deficit budget of $304,498. Now you may be scratching your head and saying, well, why would you do that? Well, because throughout the course of the year, this deficit budget could fluctuate, could end up being a positive budget. Because if we have a warm winter, for example, which we all hope for, right? And we don't use a lot of heat, then that reduces the amount of budget that we were planning on spending for heat. On the contrary, if we have a lot of snow days, we may use more heat, but if we don't have staff there working, classified staff, then that impacts the salary factor. So again, that number can fluctuate throughout the course of the year. And we also know that if we need to, we can tap into the beginning cash balance or reserves that we have on hand. Okay? General fund tax collection history. This just shows you that even in a given year, this is why the school district the school district may not get all of its anticipated tax collection in a given year for multiple reasons. There could be a sale, and that slows tax transactions. There could be back taxes on a property. There could be a lot of reasons why all the taxes are not collected. So let's just take a look at a couple years. 21, 22. You saw this number. The district certified $12,257,922 worth of tax receipts. They collected $11,294,172, so that's 92.1% of collection. Now, will that other 8% roughly, or 7.9% come in at some point? Yes, it will. When, we don't necessarily know. Which is also why you have to have a bucket of reserves. Because what you budget for collections, estimate what you ask for, may not always come in. Okay? The lowest it's been was the year 2015-16, when the district asked for $11,429,292 and received 88.32% of it. Now, has the rest of that shown up at some point? probably those taxes have probably shown up at some point that were collected. But you never really know that. Board of Education questions on the tax side of things. So we've covered the budget side of things, the tax side. Okay.
I got a question. Is the district eligible, or do they ever protest? Can they protest the taxes every year when they get an evaluation? Like protest, like a private citizen can protest their taxes?
To the district?
No, to the county.
To the county?
Right.
Yes. Great question, Eric. Valuation increases every year in December, January about. You get a slip in the mail from the county that says, this is your anticipated tax increase, and I think it's around that time period. You get that slip in the mail. Then the county sets protest date in June, I know for sure, and sometimes those carry over to July, depending on how long they last. But you can protest those valuation increases at that time at the county. Great question.
The only thing I might add to that is when you protest your taxes, you also have to show cause why you're protesting them. Let's assume you think your valuation is too high. You need to show properties that are similar to that are valued less.
So I have a question for you. Would it also reflect the other way, that when you go in and protest, the county could come inspect and determine that your valuation should be higher? Or do a,
I think that they could do that, but I have never heard that they have. They would probably look at it for the next year.
next year?
Yeah.
Next cycle.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all I have.
All right, any more questions for Jason? All right, we will continue on. Now is the time for the public forum section of the tax hearing and budget hearing. We would ask that any person who wishes to come forward and make public comment to the Beatrice Board of Education, you, as I mentioned before the meeting started, you had to present a card if you wish to speak, which I received 3 of these today. I will note that this is a public meeting for the conduct of business of the Beatrice Public School District. The meeting will operate with civility at all times. Any person wishing to make public comment must abide by and adhere to the following rules and regulations established by board policy. Each person shall be allowed to address the board 1 time. The board will not respond to comments or questions, but will address any questions during the action period of the meeting, of which the board has opportunity to discuss the budget and the tax levy. Each person per board policy, since we only have 3 that I've asked to speak, will receive 5 minutes to address the board. So we will start with Mr. Nelson, James Nelson. And again, when you address, can you please state your name and address?
Name is James Nelson, 430 East Hickory Road, Beatrice. Mr. Trustee, in my understanding, I can ask questions, but then when we're all done, you'll provide answers.
Correct. The board will respond during the action period. Yep.
So somebody needs to write down the questions,
Yes.
right?
Yep.
Okay. If I understood Mr. Alexander, the 1% charged by the county is basically a collection fee to collect the taxes. Okay. Next one is, obviously it's real confusing what you read in the paper yesterday, but what I understood from Mr. Alexander, the adopted budget for 21-22 on the published, it says your actual estimated disbursements and transfers was 28 million and change. What you actually put in last year was 43,903,215. My other question is, how much was put in for the column under special building fund that your publication says $37,000? What was actually put in there last year in your budget? And then in this proposed budget, you've got 41 million total, 41,665,000. And your special building fund has 5.7 million. And if I understood Mr. Alexander right, you don't anticipate spending anywhere near that amount. And I'd like a yes or no when you answer that one. Your estimates for 21-22, that 28,477,000 is an unaudited number. How close is administration, in their opinion, is that an accurate number?
Okay, so you're talking about on the building fund?
No, I'm talking the total of the 21-22. Actual estimated at the very bottom is 28,477,976. I'm assuming that's an unaudited number. How accurate is that in administration's opinion or the board's opinion? Or will it go up to 43.9 million, which is what apparently you put in the budget last year, from what I heard? And the same thing with special building fund, that you only had 37,000 in the 21-22. How much actually do you think is going to be spent there? Because you obviously had much more than that in your $43.9 million budget that you talked about a year ago, apparently. I realize they're all confusing, and Mr. Trustee, I provided you a sheet based upon calculations, but knowing that your $41 million proposed disbursements and transfers is really a puffed number, because you don't anticipate spending near that much. What is the actual number that you anticipate spending? Because if you're telling the public that you could spend up to $41 million and change, that's a 46% increase in your budget from what you feel. Now you realize that's a puff budget. That's what you could, if you're telling the public you could spend $41 million. But recognizing what you've said, or what Mr. Alexander has said, you don't anticipate spending, I assume, anywhere near that. Because last year you anticipated spending $43.9 million. And it looks like unaudited numbers, you spent $28.4 million. So my only other question then is, I'm really confused by the employee benefit fund. And going back to the definitions, that employee benefit fund probably, I'm taking a guess, does not include health insurance costs for the employees. That's part of the general fund. Okay, so you anticipate some unemployment claims, or at least the high budget is maybe some more unemployment claims.
Could happen.
Okay, that's all the questions I have.
Thank you, Jim. We will hopefully address all those questions here soon. All right. Missy Timmerman. Oh, there she is.
There are two names on there.
Yes. I just assumed it was. Yeah.
It's homecoming week, sorry.
Okay.
I didn't think it was nice, sorry. It's kind of a crazy night.
State your name and address.
Sorry, Missy Timmerman, 1834 Carlisle Street.
Kevin Jansen, 1718 Jefferson Street.
In my office hangs this picture, and if you've been there, I'm sure you've probably seen it. And I strive to make my decisions each day by the saying, if it's right for kids, it's right. I appreciate the board's dedication to put kids first. The board has supported and helped grow many programs within our district, and my early childhood program is a great example of that, and I appreciate you for that, and I thank you for that. As a parent, taxpayer, and an employee, I am beyond excited about the opportunity for Beatrice to get a new elementary school. As a Beatrice grad, I can remember the exact same rumblings when the new high school was trying to be built. And I think it was a tornado that really pushed people through that, and not other things. Will things be different at a new building? Absolutely, you bet. Is it worth it? 100%.
At the beginning of all this, Mr. Alexander talked about equality, safety, and efficiency, all things that our current buildings do not offer our students and staff. We've heard others talk about the rise of taxes, ours included, farmers, anybody. Could this be tough? Maybe. Is the money going for a bad cause? Absolutely not. To be able to work in a building where all grade level teachers are working together, sharing and collaborating, to have the ability to share spaces where students can work in small groups with leveled instruction and have resources and staffing to help these groups will be absolutely amazing. To have the ability to move children amongst 4 or 5, possibly even 7 classes, and not just 2 or 3, will both help not just teachers, but staff, and all kids included.
Just like when people came to the high school or the House of Orange, they are super impressed with our facilities. Were people always excited about the idea of these spaces? No way. I can remember many nights when my mom went to meetings and walked door to door, handing out pamphlets and buttons, because we didn't have social media, to support the new high school. But are many of those people now enjoying the new high school where they don't have to worry about unsafe bleachers, or watching a play in our wonderful Performance Arts Center, or run track, play soccer or football in a fantastic outdoor complex? We're proud of our high school. Do we miss the old bleacher creatures in the now middle school gym? You bet, those were fun times. But we've continued to grow, just as we will do with the new elementary school.
With growth and change, we have gone away from neighborhood schools. 5 years ago, we had the opportunity to add a preschool, and we went to grade level buildings. Many worried how this would affect the neighborhoods and the kids. I believe the transition was wonderful. Were there bumps? You bet there were. But we did get it figured out, and we made the best decision for kids. As a person responsible for 2 different buildings, I can tell you the upkeep is ongoing and constant. It rains, you have leaks coming in the doors, you have leaks coming through the roof. We had to replace and repair multiple pieces of equipment. Yesterday, we had evacuation because we thought we had a gas leak, but it was just an old air leak from an old compressor. All of these of which we deal with on a daily basis. Each time the health inspector comes, we always hear about the lack of sinks, the heating agents, the water temperature, and the food being prepared and coming to us early.
We're before you tonight to tell you how excited we are for the opportunity that our community has given for a new school. Each day we see the need more and more for a quality space for our students to grow. I simply cannot wait for the awesome things that our staff and students will be able to produce from the new tool which will be given to them. As I often remind staff, the right thing for kids isn't always the easiest or quickest thing for us. Remember, if it's right for kids, it's right.
All right, thank you, Missy and Kevin. As that was the request we've had for public comment, we will close the public forum portion of the meeting now and move on to the actions section. Can I first have a motion for approval of the 2022-23 budget?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 approve the 2022-23 budget as presented.
Thank you, Doris. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Aaron. Now would be discussion around the budget by the board and then also to address Mr. Nelson's questions. Do you want to start with that, Jason?
Sure. So I tried to write them down as quickly as I could, Jim, but if I miss something, you can come up and ask again, if that's okay. So basically what you're asking about in a lot of these is, why is that number higher? You call it a puff number. Why is that number higher for anticipated spending? The first rule of budgeting that they teach you in school finance is overestimate expenditures, underestimate revenue, which is probably what a lot of you do in your homes, or it's a good practice because you want to make sure that your expenditures don't exceed your revenue, or you're in trouble. You don't have enough money to pay your bills. So keep that in mind. The other thing that I would tell you is that you asked about how accurate is that 43.9 million from 21-22 as an estimate? Am I understanding the correction?
Just the opposite.
Okay.
How accurate is the 28.4 when you budgeted 43.9?
For the current expenditures for this year?
Correct.
Okay. I would say that's as fairly accurate as I can get it on the basis of what 2021 actually was. So as we approach August 31st and as we pay the final set of bills at the August board meeting, then we make that estimate based on what those bill totals are and what we anticipate having for bills that come in between the last board meeting in August and the end of the month. So that number is as close as I can possibly get it, okay? It's an estimate, because we still have outstanding bills coming to us from vendors.
If I may, Mr. Alexander, and I won't go away, you certainly don't anticipate another $15 million in bills.
Not unless, well, not in that budget cycle because it's over, but I'm gonna have a $60 million or $60,000 bill for an HVAC system, air conditioner at the middle school. So that's where we have to budget for unanticipated expenses, Jim. You never know. Could it happen that a tornado comes through and takes out part of a building in August? Well, it almost happened in December. We had a huge windstorm. It's happened in the past before. Those are just, that's why we budget with a puff number, in your words, is because we're anticipating the worst, is what I said at the beginning. Worst case scenario. So,
Jason?
yeah.
I think what he wants to know is, are you anticipating major bills to come in that would bump that number up $4 million?
Not at this
Not for
point.
this fiscal year.
No, not for this.
Is that correct, Jim?
Yeah, closer to 15 million if you get to the 43.
You know, you might
I can't
have
imagine that you
100,000.
would.
Yeah, I can't imagine we would either. You asked about the 37,000 in the special building fund. Do I anticipate that that's pretty accurate? I do.
And then the 1% collection fee, yes, that is what essentially we pay to the county assessor to collect those taxes.
Correct.
I think one other question I had on my notes here, Jason, was in the employee benefit fund potential, which I think maybe you answered before this, but.
Yeah, so again, the employee benefit fund, that number goes up, obviously, because there's a lot of factors that factor into that. Unemployment can be one, workman's comp can be another. We can pay workman's comp out of that. We never know how many workman's comp claims we're gonna have. So again, it's an anticipated number that it could, you just don't know what that could be. And it's based on a number of factors that I didn't spend a lot of time reading through the employee benefit fund as to what all the things that could come out of that are, but you never know. An example of the past, if I may, is that we've had previously a teacher that was walking down the hallway, slipped, and blew out a hip, broke a hip, fell down. That procedure was determined workman's comp because they're on duty, cost the district $100,000.
That answer your questions, Jim? I want to make sure.
That does on that one, yes.
And if, Jim, if there's other questions you have, please feel free to come in anytime. We can set up a meeting with Mr. Trustee and that goes for anybody. If you have a question, please feel free to come in.
Did you answer the 5.7 million? He had asked if we were really gonna spend 5.7 million, because you said you may
this
not.
year.
This year?
Did you answer that already?
I think we'll spend 5.7 million. Probably not that amount. It all depends on what happens with the middle school, the high school, and anything that we may be faced with the preschool and the 3 elementary schools currently. And then obviously with the construction of the new school, we're budgeting for that as well in that fund. And that does include the 2.3 million of federal funds. I don't know if we'll spend that because it all just depends on timing of how quick the building goes up.
If I may, one last one. If in a perfect world, you got all of the revenue that you think you could possibly get, would we be getting in $41 million?
In grants, that we've got $20 million of grants out there.
No, but what I'm saying is, Total available resources before property taxes is 27.9 million. And your property tax request is 14.8. In a perfect world, if all that came in, would the district get $41 million
Of revenue,
of revenue?
if it all came in,
Yes.
would we get all $41 million of revenue? That's what we budget for. But like the tax collection history said, we don't know if that's gonna come in or not. So in a perfect world, if you budget that amount of money, you would hope that it comes in. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't.
And we also have a requirement for cash reserves with the board has, so there's funds set aside that are a reserve a rainy day. If for some reason no revenue came in, period, we have a reserve fund that we could continue to operate for a number of days.
And I guess I would offer an example of that in 1998, I believe it was, I was a teacher and in Sargent, Nebraska. And the state of Nebraska came in and told schools, we are not going to give you your state aid for the period of January through March. And so that's why it's necessary to have that cash reserve balance. You never know what could happen either on a federal level or a state level that could impact that revenue coming in. Or on the flip side of that, on the budget side, the expenditure that you might incur that could happen. A legal situation could happen that could cost you millions of dollars.
Is state and federal funding based upon your estimated budget?
Some state funding is, I mean, the state sets your budget, but federal funding, no. Federal funding is pretty much, the government's gonna tell you what they send you, and there's been times where they've come back and said, we're not gonna send you that much.
Which federal funds are not included in these numbers, correct?
They are in your receipt side.
Receipt.
Yeah, state and federal, that one slide that we talked about, our revenues, we talked about the property taxes, the state aid, and then the state and federal reserves that come in. So that's all included in these numbers.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments on the budget proposal from the board? Okay, seeing none, can I have your votes, please? And the proposed budget passes 7-0. Next up is approval of the 2022-23 property tax request resolution. Can I have a motion, please?
Whereas Nebraska Revised Statute 77-1632 and 77-1633 provides that the governing body of Beatrice Public Schools passes by a majority vote a resolution or ordinance setting the tax request, and whereas a special public hearing was held as required by law to hear and consider comments concerning the property tax request, now therefore the governing body of Beatrice Public Schools resolves that the 2022-2023 property tax request be set at General Fund $12,590,909. The bond fund is 0. Special Building Fund is $1,937,466. The qualified capital purpose is $361,277. The undertaking fund is 0. The total assessed value of property differs from last year's total assessed value by 6.58%. The tax rate, which would levy the same amount of property taxes as last year, when multiplied by the new total assessed value of property, would be 1.00963 per $100 of assessed value. Beatrice Public Schools proposes to adopt a property tax request that will cause its tax rate to be 1.075501 per $100 of assessed value. Based on the proposed property tax request and changes in other revenue, the total operating budget of Beatrice Public Schools will decrease last year's budget by negative 1.13%. A copy of this resolution be certified and forwarded to the county clerk on or before October 15th, 2022.
Okay, thank you, Doris. Do I have a second on this motion, resolution?
Second.
Second by Janet. Any comments from the board? Discussion? Okay, seeing none, can I please have your votes on the tax levy request? And motion resolution passes 7-0. Thank you. Can I now have a motion to adjourn?
I move that the Board of Education of District 15 adjourn.
Second.
Second by Aaron. Your votes, please. We are adjourned.